All right, I've got a great show for you today. I'm going to be speaking with Royce White, who is running for Senate up in the great state of Minnesota. We're going to be covering trending news stories and some of the stuff that Democrats are trying to pull. Royce, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on, man. I appreciate it.
So, NBA star, now you are trying to make a difference, improve your country, improve your state. You're running against the radical Amy Klobuchar up
Yeah.
there in Minnesota. I wanted to let me leave Minnesota just for a minute. I want to discuss a lawsuit that was just launched last night in the state of Michigan. Donald Trump has ordered Lara Trump to start this. It was discovered that the election board only hired 50 Republican poll watchers, but they hired 2,300 Democrat poll watchers. How are we supposed to be confident that our votes are going to be counted correctly if the majority of people doing the poll watching are Democrats? I mean, it's a 700% difference in
Yeah.
which party gets to count the votes. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, my thought is we're not supposed to be confident. We're not supposed to be confident. We shouldn't be confident as Republicans, but even furthermore, I don't think their intention is to care about our confidence whatsoever. Their plan is to gaslight us and tell us we have no right whatsoever to question the integrity of our elections, that we shouldn't question the safety or security of the machines. We shouldn't talk about ballot harvesting. You got a 90 upwards of a 95, 96% Democrat vote here in the senior living homes in Minnesota. So this is a trend we see all across the country. We're not supposed to ask questions whatsoever.
Yeah. Well, and when you do ask questions, for example, down in the state of Georgia, Trump says, "Hey, something doesn't smell right. I took Georgia. It's actually a very red state outside of Atlanta." And then he ends up in this massive lawsuit where they're trying to jail him. They get
Yeah,
this mug shot, which ended up working in his favor.
yeah.
And now it's come out that nearly 500,000 ballots are missing or never existed, and we're not allowed to question the election. Do you question at least that there was some kind of shenanigans in the 2020 election?
Well, I mean, when I played in the Big Three, I think it was not this past season, this summer that just ended, but last season, I wrote Trump won on the side of my head during the game. I got a nice bald head here, so I can use it as a billboard there on national television. But I wrote Trump won on the side of my head, and the entire mainstream media threw a fit. And as expected. But yeah, I mean, I think he won the election. I'm just going to go right out and say I think he won the 2020 the 2020 election. I think there was fraud. I think there's a lot of proof that there was fraud. Let's talk about the machines in general. We live in this strange world where if you support Donald Trump or if you're MAGA, you can't question the security of the machines. Yet my opponent here in the state of Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar, was on the record in 2018 questioning the security of the machines. That she called for backup paper ballots for the entire union because they had fears that Russia would be able to hack the elections and the machines in 2020. I mean, this was all the way in 2018, so this was 2 years after he had beat Hillary, and they were still talking about the insecurity of the elections and the machines for the upcoming 2020 election. So not only did they say 2016 may have been tampered with, or there may have been fraud, they were preparing for there to be fraud in the upcoming 2020 election. And as soon as they win, there's no chance of fraud whatsoever. And the same is true for 2024. I mean, these people just think the American populace is stupid.
Yeah. Well, you look at Pennsylvania, right? We go to bed on election night. Donald Trump's up 700,000 votes. You wake up and Joe Biden's won. Then 3 years later, they realize, wait a minute, there are hundreds of thousands of ballots with no dates, bad dates, late dates.
Yeah.
All of those thrown out. Trump would have won. Same thing down in Georgia. You get rid of these ghost votes, and he dominated the state. So
Yeah.
hopefully, these lawsuits that Lara Trump and the RNC are doing, but the old RNC, under Rona McDaniels, they didn't seem to give a damn about looking into anything. They just wanted to raise money off of complaining that something wasn't quite right, while the American people believed that they were getting to the bottom of it. I think she really misled a lot of people. I want to roll a clip from Tucker Carlson's show this week where he talks about Kamala Harris and her DNC speech. So let me roll that, and then we'll talk about it together.
What he intends to do if we give him power again. Consider his explicit intent to set free violent extremists who assaulted those law enforcement officers at the Capitol. His explicit intent to jail journalists, political opponents, and anyone he sees as the enemy.
Can I just interject here for a second? This woman's really scary. She could easily get elected president. She's much more skillful than I have ever seen. She's a liar on the deepest level. The things she is saying right now are not just untrue. They're the opposite of the truth, which is the hallmark of evil. She's an extremist. She'll say anything. She's much more like Gavin Newsom than I ever realized. I could go through a whole litany of why what she's saying is not true. It wasn't an armed mob. There's not one person inside the Capitol with a firearm, period. The only person who was shot in the Capitol was an unarmed woman shot by one of Nancy Pelosi's bodyguards. So again and again, she's telling us that she fought the cartels to secure the border. She's the border czar, and the border is controlled by the cartels.
She argued that Donald Trump, quote, tried to throw away your votes. Didn't the Democrat Party just throw away all the votes and install her?
Well, exactly. She's saying that Donald Trump will free from prison violent extremists, meaning like 75-year-old lower middle class women with diabetes, when she endorsed defunding the police and opening the prisons to allow actual criminals out, which is why the crime rate has spiked, to allow the population of Venezuela's prisons, Caracas's prisons, are now living in the United States because of her. I mean, I guess what I'm saying is, and I don't want to sound like I'm whining or fact-checking, which I hate, but what she's saying is the mirror image of the truth. She doesn't care. She's got no reference points in the truth, and she's an extremist. And she's a former prosecutor, and no former prosecutor should hold power, period. I've covered them my whole life. I've intensely disliked every single one of them for good reason. I think they're scary, they're liars, and they're megalomaniacal. And they put people in prison for political reasons. I've seen it again and again and again, and she's one of them.
All right. What are your thoughts on that? She's really trying to paint Donald Trump as like unleashing pit bulls on the American people, when in fact his only words were, "We're going to the Capitol to peacefully protest." What are your thoughts on Tucker Carlson's words?
Well, I like Tucker Carlson. I really do. I think he's an American hero. He stood in the breach, stood in the gap, and he stood up at a time where we all needed somebody to do so. And he came from inside the machine. And Fox News is as much a part of the machine ruining this country as any other mainstream media institution by my measure. Now, they may say some things that I agree with because that's what they've been positioned to do, but make no mistake about it, them firing Tucker Carlson was in large part connected to your first question about the integrity of elections. And when Fox News had the greatest question of American citizenship on their desk, they punted. And they owe a huge debt to the American people in terms of credibility for punting on the question of dominion and how secure the machines are. So I like Tucker. That other individual there, I mean, he's as much a part of the problem as anybody. Jason Whitlock, neocon extraordinaire, neocon rhino extraordinaire. And part of the and the reason why I bring that up isn't just to take a shot at him, although he seems interested in doing so when it comes to me. But there's a corollary to what we're talking about. And Donald Trump and January 6th. See, one of the issues that we have in this movement, that the conservative movement and even the America First and MAGA movement, is that we don't understand how effective Black Lives Matter has been as an organization at recruiting. and even more so than recruiting, upholding the public narrative about support for any litany of policies. And that's what Black Lives Matter has been most effective in doing, because nobody could make the case or claim that Black Lives Matter has helped improve the lives of Black people in this country. I mean, that's just fictitious by fictitious standards. But what it has done, it has dominated and controlled the narrative. And what many people have done on the right in the conservative movement, spent more time complaining about how effective it is versus going out in the streets and counter protesting and counter demonstrating. And what the people on January 6th did was try to meet that demand. They said, wait a second, hold on. For the entire year, we've seen people protest these police incidents, and now we come to see an election that we don't think was fair. We don't think was tabulated correctly. We think there was fraud and corruption in. And now we want to go to the front door, or the doorstep of power in this country, which was written by our founding fathers to be able to do so. And all of a sudden we're enemy number one. We're persona non grata. We're extremists. We're terrorists. So on and so forth. The contradiction is so obvious. And so what Tucker said is perfectly valid. What my criticism is, and what it has been since becoming a candidate and becoming a rising voice in the movement, is the stress to conservatives and patriots alike. Hey, this ain't gonna change. Of course she's gonna lie. Of course she's gonna say that we as American politicians, we as American elitist, corrupt politicians should never have to fear the frustration and anger or animus from the people. That's their whole MO. Their whole MO is they can lie to you, do what they want, and they should never have to fear the people. A lot of conservatives would agree with that. A lot of conservatives, in fact, condemned the protesters of January 6th, wholly, and said, "Hey, they shouldn't have even been here. It's all on Donald Trump's back." Donald Trump said, "Be peaceful" a number of times. I mean, you can go back and read it. You can go back and watch it. You can go back and see that he said a number of times that people should be and remain peaceful. But that's not even the point. The point is we've created a common culture in this country where our political elite think that they're completely detached from any of the decisions they make when it comes to the people, and that's patently un-American.
Yeah. Do you think that I mean, we now know that the FBI was in the crowd on January 6th. We know
Right.
that they were instigating
Yeah.
anger and let's go into the Capitol and different things like that. The police were throwing out the percussion grenades, the flashbang grenades. But you mentioned that we have a right to come to the door of the government
Yeah.
and protest and ask. I think what maybe caught them off guard was they opened the door and let people in, and then boom, now they've got a reason to arrest you for 20 years. It seems like a bit of a trap where it's like, wait a minute, you guys let us in, and then now we're in trouble for taking your invitation to come in. It feels like a little bit of a trap to me.
Yeah, well, the corruption and let's say deception and controlled opposition of the deep state and security state knows no bounds, and we don't have a good gauge of how far and widespread that corruption is. We just don't have any way to track it. I mean, this is what Edward Snowden said. This was the importance of the entire Edward Snowden controversy was he said, in order to prove that something illegal was done by the government, you have to do something illegal to get the information. And that very same thing is echoed here in this case, where we don't know how far deep or how deep the FBI or any other intelligence agency or domestic agency was involved in this thing, or has been involved in a number of things in the past. We know they have the capacity to. That at least has been declassified now. We can go all the way back to the 60s and see a lot of that, some of which in the Black community itself. So, I mean, we know this is out there. We don't know how deep and how far or widespread it is. But again, what I will say is, in my honest opinion, I think that there were probably agitators out there that were government instructed, government funded. I think they're everywhere. I mean, I think they're in your local activist groups on both sides of the aisle. I think they're in media. I think they're in corporations. I mean, I think these people are everywhere. What I will say is we have a real crisis of leadership in our movement, and it's not a crisis of Donald Trump's leadership. It's a crisis, a sort of spiritual crisis in our movement where we show a lack of temperance. We have a real lack of temperance in this MAGA movement, and I say that because before we ever stormed the Capitol and we professed the 1776 overthrow of the government, if we don't first have those 100-day sit-ins, those 100-day sit-ins at the Planned Parenthood with our Bibles and our constitutions, or at the doorstep of the Capitol, we show a lack of commitment. We show a lack of resolve in how we view our country and our citizenship and our freedom. And so, my I say that not to bang on the January 6th protesters, just to say that a real culture of leadership has been missed, and that we haven't properly conveyed the importance yet again to stand there, as long as we need to. I mean, that's the real Judeo-Christian ethic, right? That is more in line with the Judeo-Christian ethic than we're going to storm the Capitol and I don't know, set some stuff on fire. They didn't do much, but even to breach the Capitol and to do what? I mean, anybody who believes, and this is kind of a gaffe too, is like anybody that believes those protesters had any chance whatsoever of disrupting the flow of government, they're living in a delusion. They actually think that those people run the government through and through. They don't. That's just not a reality of how the American government really works at a fundamental level. So it's kind of a fugazi on both sides, but I think we as the America First movement, we have to get into this mindset that there may be some 100-day sit-ins that need to happen in order for us to change this country or save this country.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, I like that. That's interesting. Okay. Kamala Harris is guaranteeing that she will get a ceasefire with Gaza and Israel. Kamala Harris says she will no longer tax tips, even though they are spying on people's Venmo accounts and Cash App, and hired a bunch of IRS people. Today, she said she will build a border wall after telling people for 5 years that it's racist, xenophobic. It's Donald Trump's vanity project. She also announced that she rejects Biden's electric vehicle mandate. Does this woman have any original ideas, or is she just going to steal Donald Trump's entire platform?
Yeah, that seemed to be the plan, isn't it? I mean, and the scary part is she doesn't believe any of it. I mean, I could see if there were some ideologues out there that they marched up on stage at the podium and let them loose, and these people actually believed what they were saying. She doesn't believe a word of what she's saying. I mean, it's all theater. I mean, it's as fake as that laugh. And people know better, and that's the other thing. I think a lot of people actually do know better. Even some of the people that would say that they're going to vote for, that they support her, they know she knows better. A lot of support for Kamala Harris is a deep spiritual investment in the status quo of this country, and the danger or the risk or the uncertainty of changing the status quo. I mean, who actually could say that they watch her talk or they hear her list off these things that she's going to do and thinks that she believes it, let alone them believe it? I don't think any of these people believe it, honestly.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier that there's a lot of rhinos in leadership positions. I read today that hundreds of former Mitt Romney, John McCain, former George W. Bush, and George H.W. Bush aides have publicly announced that they will endorse Kamala Harris over President Trump. Why aren't these people just becoming Democrats, right? Like the party of Donald Trump is not the same party of George Herbert Walker Bush. It has changed. And so like they put out these articles to get people that are maybe on the fence to go, oh, well, I kind of like George Bush. I think he did his best, during 9/11. Oh, maybe I'll listen to these people. I don't think most MAGA people, most independent thinkers give a crap what these people think. But is that one of the major problems with the Republican Party?
No,
is that
it's
we
the
are
whole problem.
infiltrated with rhinos?
Oh, it's the whole problem, sir. Yes, you have accurately identified the issue. It's not just a small issue. It's a plague. We have a neocon rhino plague in this party, and it's not that they are the voter base. It's not that their influence or sway has any real teeth in the average American citizen. Because look how many people voted for Donald Trump in 2016 and 2020, even on paper, fraud and cheating aside. I mean, there's a lot of people who support him and that voted for him, so that carries a lot of weight. But the plague is really how politics is run as an industry within our party. And I faced it here in Minnesota. I mean, I had neocon, rhino, Republican establishment stalwarts line up to back my primary opponent. Norm Coleman, Tim Pawlenty, Paul Gazelka, you probably wouldn't know that name, Michelle Benson. These are more state level people. Rudy Boschwitz, Senator Rudy Boschwitz. And I don't mean to badmouth these people. I think there's a real ideological schism in our party that needs to be solved, and we need real leaders to step up. Now, I wouldn't say that I'm doing or could do any better of a job of that than Donald Trump has already done. So I'm not sure that schism can even be fixed, but I know it exists, and I know this is one of the most pivotal moments in our nation's history. And the real schism is something. The reason why I say it's the whole problem is these people are there. The reason they're still there and they're not becoming Democrats is their whole job is to keep new people from becoming Republicans. They're vanguarding the wall of the Republican Party to make sure that it doesn't become too MAGA, too America first, too populist, or too nationalist. That's what they're there to do. They are the liberal light version of the conservative and America first movement, and that's why they stick around.
Yeah. Does it concern you at all that if Kamala wins, she is the main negotiator on behalf of the United States with people like Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin and Kim Jong-un? Like, she has no foreign policy experience. She has no war experience. I just think, like, if I'm going into battle with somebody, do I want Donald Trump or do I want Kamala Harris? The idea of Kamala Harris being the head of the military is kind of unsettling to me.
Yeah, well, that's not even that's not even a toss. It's not even close. It's not even close. She's wholly unqualified. And I'll say this. Donald Trump wasn't some military expert. He's a businessman, so he understands the art of a deal, and he understands what a fair deal is, and that takes you a long way because much of war, as we know, is business, right? I mean, there's an entire military industrial complex. To go back to my point about the neocons, that is their ideological base is this military industrial complex warmongering neocon sort of worldview. And Kamala Harris is the same way. I mean, to think that Kamala and Joe Biden and Pelosi and Amy Klobuchar, for example, who was there in the Ukraine in 2014, setting up the coup so that we could get into this prolonged war with Russia. I mean, these people are all part of the same worldview. And that's why in my campaign, what we've been trying to do is clarify this for people, although we're up against a huge mainstream media machine, which is why I thank you for letting me come on. But we live under, and I'm saying this for a reason because I'm talking about your war comment. We live under a prevailing political ideology called the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. Now, it may shock some people to realize that their conservative thought leaders and their conservative politicians serve at the behest of the post-World War II democratic liberal order. And we wonder why everything seems so liberal. These people believe in this ideology. And, there was a great lie told to the American people after World War II. It was something like, we're going to take democracy and freedom all around the world, and we're going to make people self-determining by making their nations self-determining. We didn't do that. We made nations dependent on America's working class, really. I mean, our ingenuity, our innovation, our military, obviously, our economic and monetary policy, yes, but really our working class. The entire world, in many ways, is upheld by the American working class. And that's been the norm and the status quo since the end of World War II, and it's grown and it's festered. Conservatives like Kissinger and their liberal buddies, Zygmunt Brzezinski and Klaus Schwab. I mean, he was there at the table with those two thought leaders about globalism and globalization. These guys have been, entrenching us further and further in this global policy for many decades. And now Kamala Harris, I mean, this is the real gaffe with the Democrat Party. You got your Antifa protesters outside the DNC. They say big corporations and colonialism and capitalism are the issue. Inside the DNC, you have political puppets who serve at the behest openly of Alex Soros and other international dignitaries whose thought leadership and academic tradition set the whole scam up for us to go and steal natural resources from other countries, displace their citizens, and have them, come to America, and we have to open up our borders to them. I mean, the whole thing is like the strangest theater. I don't think I could write something up better myself. I don't think Stephen Hawking could. I don't think Stephen King. I don't think George Lucas. You get the best film writers in the world in history or novelists, and I don't think they could write up something more strange than what we're seeing. None of it is in alignment. None of it's coherent. The only coherence is everybody zooming each other. So,
yeah. What was your reaction to RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard, leaving the Democrat Party and endorsing Donald Trump? Do you think that's indicative of anything? Do you think that's a big enough movement to move the needle?
Yeah, it's a good old-fashioned game of Red Rover, right? I mean, we'll send you Mitt Romney and Bush, and you give us Tulsi and RFK. I like that swap, right? So
yeah, that's a great way to think of it. Red Rover. Send RFK Jr. over.
Yeah, send RFK and Tulsi over, right?
Yeah, I think it could be. I think it could be really big. I'm excited to see how it's developed, how the two of those, play a role. Okay, so I saw yesterday that Don Lemon did an interview with Jen Psaki. I think she thought, oh, this is going to be a slam dunk interview. We're going to trash on Trump and MAGA, and it will be great. Yeah. And Don Lemon kind of shocked her and pointed out that he had personally gone to some of the most important swing states to interview people. And he realized two really big things. Number one, most of the people in those swing states didn't know anything about Kamala Harris. And number two, they believed in their heart that they were better off financially under Donald Trump. And so he says to Jen Psaki, I don't know how you overcome those when it's actually time to vote. And she was kind of like, she didn't know what to say. But I think there's some truth to that. They don't really know Kamala Harris. And in their heart, they feel like they were better off financially under Donald Trump. What do you think of those two messages?
Well, I mean, it's measurably fact that we were better off financially under Donald Trump. And Kamala Harris has been in office as vice president, and you can say, oh, the vice president isn't the president. They don't have control. It was like, okay, well, if that's the case, then Kamala Harris's first order of business when it came to laying out her platform would have been something like, we're gonna depart from Joe Biden's policy around the economy. We're gonna depart from Joe Biden's policy in general. She didn't do that. There's no gap between Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. That's the Democrat Party's pitch right now. So Joe Biden's economy now becomes attached to Kamala Harris's plans for the economy by anybody who's thinking clearly. People not knowing anything about her, they think they're going to solve by making this all about women's reproductive rights. And that is their plan, and that has been the recurring theme of most of the female politicians that they prop up, and that's why Tulsi, hightailed out of there, because Tulsi's like, guys, I want to talk about foreign policy. I want to talk about any policy other than trying to make this all about my identity and my biology as a woman. I actually can hang with the big boys, quote unquote. I can hang with the boys when we talk about policy, and I think Tulsi can. And she's a G. And matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, it was Tulsi who intellectually decapitated Kamala Harris back when she ran in 2020 up on that debate stage. So Kamala's got big issues in front of her. I think Donald Trump is leading. I don't buy these polls for a minute. I remember back in 2016, they said Hillary Clinton was up 12 points on election day. So again, these people are well entrenched in everything that we see and consume, but the writing is on the wall. Donald Trump is the better option, and Kamala Harris is about as fake as you can possibly find it. Honestly, there's some other Democrats over there who I would say, okay, not one that I would vote for, because I just, the referendum's on the Democrat Party's platform. But there are some other politicians over on their side who are at least somewhat more believable. I'm not saying they're more honest, but they're more believable. She's the least believable one they could have possibly ran. So really what they're saying to their base is, all of you are stupid. You're going to vote for us regardless, no matter who we run. And that's what we're going to try and take to the bank.
What you're there in Minnesota? What are your thoughts on Governor Tim Walz? Bad pick. I mean, did that really help her in any way?
Now that hurts her big time. If we're talking about sane and logical voters, okay, Governor Tim Walz, it's hard to find somebody who's further to the left than Kamala. It's hard to find somebody who makes Kamala seem even the slightest bit more moderate. Governor Tim Walz manages to do that. I mean, this whole story that he's a moderate is unimaginable. It's unspeakable. It's unverifiable. It's ridiculous for anybody who's from Minnesota. He is far left of Kamala Harris. And we could talk about the tampons in the bathroom, and yeah, that's an example. We could talk about him threatening to, I don't know, throw free speech out. I mean, that he basically said free speech isn't guaranteed in this country in an interview publicly, which is a crazy thing for a governor to say, just in general, unnecessary thing even. But the more subtle socialist Tim Walz signal is, you had an $18 billion surplus. You didn't give a single penny of it back to the working class here in Minnesota. That's communism. Or, you know, the Minnesota people are taxed number 8 in the country in taxes, number 20 in GDP, number 21 in population. I mean, that's communism. You're overtaxed, and you know, it's okay. And then if all of that isn't enough, uh, the Waltz pick is really to try and kick back up the dust of 2020. It's to throw it back on the table for conservatives to make a comment on. And it's to remind all Black people all across the country that there still is this racial divide and gap on an issue like policing, for example. And that is an issue that still needs to be sorted out in some respects. I think the answer is simple. I'll just throw that in there. I think we need more police. I think they need to be paid more. And I think they need much better training. I'm a professional mixed martial artist. I train at the gym every day with people who served in the military, former Marine SEALs, Green Berets, Delta, SWAT, police officers. Unanimously, everybody agrees that the police are not mandated to train enough for the job that they're forced to do, unfortunately. So we need more police, we need them better paid, and we need them better trained. So that would solve a lot of issues. But anyway, Waltz is intended to kick back up the 2020 dust. They want to kick George Floyd back up onto the table, and they want to let conservatives make an opinion about it. That way they can appeal to the Black and brown communities over again with the same narrative from 4 years ago. The lie is Minnesota and our Department of Education has been under Democrat rule for about 30 years. And we have one of the worst racial disparity gaps in our education of anybody else in the country. The greater Minnesota education system is highly touted as one of the best public education systems in the country, while our Black communities, Minneapolis, for example, has the second worst proficiency rating in all of America. Okay, so, you know, Minnesota is a real unique example of how Democrat policy actually ends up hurting Black people in the long run. And we have a 30-year run to show that in education.
Yeah, that's actually very interesting, where the Black community would support a governor who is basically overseeing Black children not get the education and skill set they need to live a good life, right? Like, I remember reading a study one time. They said one of the common things of people that end up in jail, regardless of skin color, is that they have small vocabularies. And so it's like they don't have this ability to express themselves the way that they need to. And so they act out, bad behavior, things like that. Wow, I didn't realize it was.
Well, you see why Governor Walz and the whole Democrat Party as a whole, and some of those rhino neocon people we discussed as well. You see why I'm such a danger, right? And that was my point earlier is, they want to keep people like me from the main stage because I could potentially inspire a lot of those young black men to think, I don't know, running for United States Senate, writing a book or talking about politics in a way that's substantive is actually more fruitful and meaningful than being in a local street gang and you're getting shot for something that's really trivial in the long run. That's the greatest threat to this entire narrative, right? That racial narrative that Kamala's running on, first black woman to be president. People like me are the greatest threat to that cog in the machine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of figured with Tim Walz, like, I don't know if you've ever done this just like for fun, but like you put a mirror right here and it looks like it's, your full face because of the symmetry. And so like imagine Kamala Harris in the middle, right? And on this side, she has an older grandpa like white gentleman with white hair. And they're like, oh crap, we got to get rid of him, but we got to keep the mirror image the same. Oh, we'll get Tim Walz. He's like this kind of weak white-haired guy.
Yeah.
He's a grandpa-like figure. Maybe his kids have done a lot less crack. So that helps our story. I just wonder if, they didn't swap out one older gentleman with white hair for another one. I don't know. It seemed like they were just kind of swapping white dude for white dude. I don't know. It seemed weird.
Yeah, no, it's a fair point. Look, one of the strangest things to me since entering into politics and just hearing their rhetoric on an ongoing basis is this weird obsession with white men. And I really don't get the basis of it. It's something like, if you're a white man, you're the most evil, treacherous, dangerous thing on the planet, unless you're a white man who votes Democrat. If you're a white man who votes Democrat, all the white men in our party, or the white men that commentate with a tilt for liberal policy, all of those white men are fine. All you other white men anywhere in the world are the biggest danger to the human species. It's probably the most blatantly stupid talking point that they have, just because it's so contradictory. It's right. Nothing's wrong with Tim Walz. Nothing's wrong with Kamala's husband. Nothing's wrong with Joe Biden. Nothing's wrong with Bill Clinton. Nothing's wrong with any of the people that agree with us. Nothing's wrong with those white men. But Donald Trump is the access of evil. It's like, yeah, they really think low of their voters. That's what's the scary part, is how much they insult their intelligence.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're running against the incumbent,
Yeah,
Amy
Klobuchar.
Klobuchar.
Yeah.
What do you think that you bring that she doesn't, that Minnesota would just flourish and benefit from?
One is I'm not bought and paid for. I mean, I don't think there's a better funded Democrat operative in the entire party than Amy Klobuchar. She is probably the prototype of the most dangerous politician in this country, in that she's not considered to be radical, although many of her votes in the Senate or her policy positions are just as radical as Tim Walz or Biden. In fact, Biden hangs his hat on the fact that, Klobuchar, Tina Smith, senator from Wisconsin, those three women are his, political backbone, right? So she's just as radical as them in many ways, but she has this kind of unassuming, Midwest Minnesota nice persona, and these are the best types of political profiles. These are the people that the deep state and the security state really love to fund, because they got a long runway, and she's been in there now 18 years, going on 24 years. This would be her fourth term.
Wow.
Yeah, 18 years. I mean, she was there long before any of this Donald Trump controversy ever hit the main stage. She's been a part of the status quo since Bush. Actually, right?
Wow.
I mean, that she's part of that uniparty, which would probably explain why you can find her in pictures there in Ukraine with Lindsey Graham and John McCain, because that's the old uniparty, is right. It's got nothing to do with the Matt Gaetzes of the world. These are newcomers, right? And I love Matt Gaetz. He endorsed me, but he called it out. He said this DC has been eaten away, is hollowed out by special interest money. I don't have any special interest money or PAC money. We won a statewide primary in Minnesota a couple weeks back with $150,000 and all volunteers, not a single paid staffer. That's not even supposed to be possible. But it tells you just how much the American people, at least on our side of the aisle, are ready for change. We understand what's dominated politics, and the referendum on Amy now is whether or not we can get that to a broader audience. The biggest difference between her and I, from a policy standpoint, is she's a forever war monger. Okay, if there's one thing you can be sure about Amy Klobuchar, she's gonna raise that debt ceiling to print more cash, to put you in debt, to fight a war a world away that has no path to victory, and that is the war between Ukraine and Russia. Not one of them, not her, Victoria Nuland, Bob Keegan, any of these international dignitaries can tell you the path to victory with Russia. In fact, it seems like they're escalating it on purpose just to see how far it may go, and they can capitalize on that crisis. But I'm a very anti-war candidate, and I say that is the beating heart of the America First movement, and platform is a change in foreign policy.
Yeah. Okay, great. How can we support you? I want to see you win. I want to see you make Minnesota great again. Where can I send people to be supportive?
RoyceWhite.us, that's our campaign website. If you're in Minnesota, obviously, we got a chance to sign up for signs, to volunteer, to do phone calls and door knocking and all those traditional things. If you're not in Minnesota, obviously you can donate. We appreciate that. All the small dollar donations are greatly, greatly appreciated. But spreading the word, just spreading the word, and don't assume that anybody knows what you know, or has seen what you've seen. A lot of people here, Minnesota is a place where my opponent, Amy Klobuchar, has traditionally done very well with Republicans. Some people would be shocked to know. I mean, when you win a state by 68%, where a gubernatorial race is really only split by about 150,000 votes, Amy wins at 68% the last two elections, because Republicans seem to like her. They haven't figured it out yet that she's not who she claims to be, or that she's a big part of the problem. So spread the word. Spread the word. Amy Klobuchar's got to go. The same as Ilhan Omar. I mean, they're fruit from the same poisonous tree. They really are.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, gosh. All right. Well, this has been a great interview. I appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know how busy you are. I'm going to put a direct link to RoyceWhite.us so that people can check that out. Royce, thank you so much. Best of luck. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, brother. Godspeed to you.